everyone. So we are here together today with our newest members of the Covey Wellness Center team. These are 3 students in the Yorkville Master's Program at various stages of completion of the program, but all working as registered psychotherapists who are qualifying here at Covey Wellness Center. And what I wanted to do today is ask them to all come on. We so enjoy our time together here as a team, and I wanted to come on today and invite them to just share a little bit about who they are as therapists and what excites them about the work, and kind of give people a chance to get to know our newest members of the team, and also to hopefully share some good information that might be of interest to listeners, and just as a way of providing a little bit of that info to the world. And we will put this in our digital resources for sure on our social media and our website, so that people can find it and refer to it later as well. And if we really have a lot of fun, we're going to do it again. And maybe we'll add some more questions or different topics. So thanks for tuning in. And I hope you enjoy listening into our conversation. It's kind of like a video podcast format, so we'll see how that feels. So first, I'm just going to have each of the therapists who are here introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about what drew them to their work as a therapist. So we'll use this as like a springboard for getting us started. So I'm going to send it over to Rebecca first, and then we'll go Jennifer and Nadera for this one. And then we'll do more of like a popcorn format for the other questions, but I want everybody to get to know you. So Rebecca, start us off.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Rebecca. I am in my first semester of my practicum here at Covey Wellness Center, and I'm enjoying it so much so far. To answer Sarah's question, how did I get here? So originally, I started on the med school train. I went to Queens for a science degree. And yeah, that's what I thought Queens. I was going to do. Yes, go Queens. But eventually, near the end of my undergrad, I realized that's not what I was passionate about. And I felt like I was following this train of people, and I wasn't meant to be on that train. Mm-hmm. So I changed directions, and I really leaned into the universe in a way. There were signs popping up everywhere that really aligned me to the Yorkville program. I explored different avenues, and being a therapist is something that popped up. And once I put my mind on being a therapist, it kind of just all came together in this kismet way, and it just felt right. So I jumped in September 2020 during the pandemic, all online schooling, and I committed to Yorkville, and I never looked back. So that's how I made it here. And I'm just really excited to get to know different people and their unique life experiences.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. So a couple of interesting things about Rebecca, obviously, with my Queens comment. We both went to Queens. We also both went to Yorkville, incidentally, but somehow Yorkville doesn't feel as exciting as Queens, because we can all say we're in Yorkville, or like I've graduated, but it doesn't have the same, like, I don't know, oomph. It is what it is. But so that's really exciting. And Rebecca actually has moved right into the area. So she's somebody who's building her life in the area where Covey Wellness Center is centered, which is something that I've done as well. And the great thing about it is very central in Simcoe County here at Covey Wellness Center. And we serve lots of people sort of within an hour radius locally, and then lots of people online. So it's neat to have a real mix of people, some who are actually embedded and working and living in the community, and some who are in the surrounding communities. And then we have a huge community of people who come to us online as well. So that's super exciting. So the other thing I want to mention is we are all coming to you from different rooms in Covey Wellness Center. So it's like a little mini tour. So I'll just, before we get to Jennifer, Rebecca is in our, hopefully, RMT room. We are actively seeking somebody who is an RMT to join our wellness team. We have not found the right fit yet, so I'll put that out there. And if somebody's out there that thinks Covey Wellness Center is the fit for them, let us know. But so she's just popped into there, and Nadera, with the gather sign above her head, is in the group room. And so that's where we do our boutique therapy groups and our supervision groups and things, and have our lunch and all sorts of things in that room. And then Jennifer is in our her office, as well as Nadira's office. They share, and it's our yoga consultation room. And so in her space, we are doing lots of things. So you're kind of getting, and I'm in my office, so you're kind of getting a few views into the different rooms, even just with us being here. So take it over, Jennifer. Tell us about your story and what drew you to working as a therapist.
So I guess my story speaks to the fact that much like the clients that we have the opportunity to work with, I guess a culmination of my lived experiences and then I guess my lived experiences really influenced the path that I chose academically. So many years ago, I chose to enter St. Lawrence College for a social service worker program, and worked in the field for about 3 to 4 years, and figured that wasn't my place to necessarily set up camp. I needed to do more. So I went back and pursued my post-diploma in addiction treatment and prevention, which enabled me to work in the mental health and addiction field within Simcoe County for nearly a decade, 13 years in full when it comes to the social service work piece. So I hit the pause button from a standpoint of kind of reassessing where my life was at in relation to quality and quantity. And so what that spoke to was resigning from my position with Canadian Mental Health and having my third daughter and focusing on quality of life and what I needed that to look like for me individually and collectively with my family. So my goal was to always re-enter the academic field and continue to pursue my education. And so after having had my third daughter, when she entered junior kindergarten, I in turn started my undergrad with Laurentian in psychology. So did that for 4 years. In the final year of that degree, we entered the pandemic. And I did my first year of the Yorkville program during the pandemic at that time, and all that spoke to for all of us. So I feel like I'm just kind of on the tail end of it right now in relation to being in the practicum component of that program, and very excited to be re-entering the field and connecting with like-minded people, because so much of that there was a disconnect for me in that sense in relation to the education the past 6 years being distance. So I was online and then, coupled with the pandemic. So it's nice to be in an environment with like-minded people who are equally driven, if not more so, which is very inspiring. That's where I'm at right now currently. Very grateful.
So that's a long journey for you through lots of things. Like I can just imagine like the ups and downs of that, and the motherhood in there, and the going to school. So that's an amazing journey. So this is really coming to fruition at Covey Wellness Center for you. Like this is like the end of a long journey where you're just like, I'm ready to launch and can't wait to get fully integrated here. So it's awesome.
Thank you.
And I will highlight one of the reasons actually that Jennifer was a top candidate for us, other than all the obvious reasons with her background and training, was that she is an addiction specialist. And so that's something that we didn't have at Covey Wellness Center before. We certainly all have training in addictions and work with people with substance use and addictions work. But to have a specialty when so many people are struggling in that way, right on our team, that was a really important sort of piece of building out our full wellness team. And so she's kind of our go-to person on staff. She is our go-to person on staff for all things related to harm reduction and addictions and substance work. And so that's just a really nice part of the team to have been able to fill in with Jennifer's presence here. So that's really neat, and sort of a unique thing that others on the team don't necessarily offer to the same extent. So that's great. Very cool. Okay, Nadera, last but certainly not least, tell us about yourself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Nadera. I am in my second and final term of practicum. So graduation is calling my name, and it's coming up quick. What really drew me to be a therapist, it almost feels like it was a natural path for me. I felt like I've always been somebody who wanted to be in a supportive role. I just couldn't picture myself doing something outside of that scope. What that was, though, the supportive role was always quite a mystery to me, and it took a little bit of exploring. I worked in a group home setting for youth with special needs, and it was there that I really saw the vast experiences that many people face, whether it's a developmental, whether it's a behavioral, whether it's various challenges, emotional challenges, trauma that come up. We're so influenced by so many things, and there's a lot within big institutions that don't necessarily account for all the individual experiences that people may be facing. And so while it was a great opportunity to experience so many different lived experiences of others, it wasn't quite enough. And so I found myself transitioning into the educational sector, into the school board. And it was very similar in the path that it's not set up for all the individual inequalities or experiences or challenges that many might be facing. And working with a lot of youth with special needs, I really found my voice for advocacy. And I use that. And that was really my biggest push, is that to give voice and to help people find their voice, whatever that voice may be. And so I found Yorkville's program, and I did a little bit of research on that. And I talked to some people who had been in the program and what that really entailed. And I thought, we're in a pandemic, I might as well give it a shot. We're all sitting at home anyway. So I joined Yorkville at the beginning of the pandemic to really just to keep me busy, and because I like the research. And then I just kept finding my drive growing with that. And I found Sarah, and we got to chatting, and I realized this is what I was meant to do. And here I am working here since May, and it really just reaffirms that this is where I'm supposed to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's neat. So Nadera and I have a mutual friend in common that she worked with when she was working as an EA in the school system. And of course, we also have that affinity of having both worked in the school system prior to becoming therapists. So we have sort of a unique heart for teachers and EAs and the limitations of the system for people within it. And one of the big things in my journey was recognizing that there was such a great need and so little support that was consistent in the schools. And so, something that's really important to me is to be a steady presence in our community and beyond, and not have one of the problems I found with a lot of mental health supports is they would sort of fly in and fly out and be inconsistent. And people who are doing work on their mental health, they need that consistency. They don't want to be starting over with new people every 2 weeks or not be able to rely on that support. And so the beauty of private practice, what we do here at the center is that it's very client-centered, and people determine their own pacing and frequency and focus and goals. And we attempt to be a go-to person for them for as long as that makes sense for them, and someone who's accessible. And so for that, just on that note, some of you may be thinking, well, these are all Yorkville students at Covey Wellness Center. So what happens when they're done being students? Well, one of the things we do at Covey Wellness Center is we only hire students whose long-term goal is to be a part of the team. So actually their student time here, their practicum time, is kind of like a probationary time where we determine how good a fit they are with our team, with the goal to keep them. So even if you're working with somebody on the student team, that inconsistency won't happen, because that's a heart that I saw with a lot of kids that were working within the school system. They would come to me as a constant in the teacher form, rather than go to the social worker or the mental health support, the child and youth worker, because they couldn't count on them in any kind of regular way. And so that was a really big part of our hiring process and how we determine, what students are going to come on board. So people who really see themselves as part of the team. And you'll hear from everybody that it feels like home. I had a client in this morning and who said, this is your dream, isn't it, Sarah? And I'm like, yeah, and we're living it. And the space we've created, which you can probably see a little bit from here. And if you haven't come to visit us yet and you're in the area, please do drop in, because you do not have to have an appointment to come by. We have a huge area in reception that's a wellness bookshop with all kinds of products and books and resources to support mental health and wellness. That's open to the public. So you certainly we want to really relinquish that stigma and say anybody can be coming in and out of these doors. And we're loving some of our customers who just come in, every week or every couple of days, even to grab a tea and say hello and have a safe place. And that's the feeling here. It doesn't feel clinical. It doesn't feel like a doctor's office. It doesn't feel like fluorescent lighting. It feels like a home spa kind of vibe. And so it's very, very welcoming. And it just speaks to kind of how we like to do our work here. And obviously, these three women are aligned with that. And so they're feeling that same sort of sense of home. We've heard a glimmer of this in some of what you've already said, but what does most excite you about the work that you're doing with clients? So what really gets that sort of passion and excitement going? And I'm going to go reverse order this time. So Nadera, you're back to back, but just for the sake of mixing it up a bit. So Nadera, why don't you start there?
Yeah, I was actually looking forward to this question the most because what most excites me, there's almost like a shift that happens when we start working with clients. And that shift is in the first session, it might feel a little weird, it might feel a little awkward, and we're still trying to get to know each other. But somewhere along the way, the client starts to feel safe, the client starts to feel vulnerable, and the client starts to trust more. And the conversations get deeper and they get richer, and there's a lot of really good work that starts to unfold there. What most excites me is when that relationship, that therapeutic relationship, grows to the point where the client is safe and they're trusting me and we're going into these deep, rich conversations. It's really important when looking for a therapist to find the right fit for you. And it can be very important for the therapist to have the right fit for the client as well. And so when that therapeutic relationship gets to that point, that tells me that we're a good fit together and that we're doing some really good work together. And I think that's the most exciting element, just to be able to have that space, that safe space, and have the client be able to feel that in the environment that I've created for them.
Yeah, I love that. And we're all nodding because yes, that's again what we're wanting to be about. And so much of the research shows that it is the therapeutic alliance that's the single most important component of a client's success. So it's not the modalities, although there are many amazing modalities. And here at the center, we have all sorts of different modalities to provide for that different fit, that goodness of fit. But it's really that relationship. And again, in our setting, as opposed to a setting where, potentially you'll have a finite amount of sessions and then you've got to shuffle on, and we have that time compression. With this kind of relationship in a private practice, you can access that again at your pacing, at your frequency, and you can build on that over time. And Nadera is starting to see that because she's in the second term now, where she's had enough time with clients over time that this beautiful relationship is ongoing, and how it deepens and how it expands and how it grows and how there's a release of responsibility to the client. Maybe you don't see them as often, but you have this connection, and it's highly, highly, of course, relational work. And so, you begin to see that the longer you're working with a client, just how much that makes a difference. And so that's again, a big part of the way we do things, is so that we're not expecting people to be shuffled through a system or a program or 12 weeks of whatever. They're very much in the driver's seat of what we're doing. And it is beautiful to see, because they don't even realize it themselves, right, Nadera? Like, it's like you're watching, you're like, hey, so when you came 6 months ago, this is what you were saying. And now look where you've come. Look how much you've changed. Like, we can celebrate all that growth. And it's been hard won on their end, doing the work and taking it home and wrestling down hard emotions. But man, like, it's so rewarding to be a part of that healing for people. Like, it's amazing. And it's just like, it's happening all the time. And so that's a great example. Okay, Jennifer, what excites you about the work that you're doing?
Well, I think I'm going to ride on your coattails a bit on that, because I feel like you set it up for me quite nicely, in that I think one of the many things that excites me is bearing witness to that growth, whatever that speaks to for the individual, or those moments of clarity where they, in and of themselves, connect those metaphorical dots to make meaning of what's brought them through the front door. And I'll often, in different ways, find a way to reference to clients that, the work and what it entails within session, it's a snapshot, actually, like a very small snapshot of what that really speaks to, because it's 60 minutes, be it weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, but it's what those individuals take from those sessions and then integrate into their lives outside of the context of the session, and how that then translates into the insight and awareness that they develop. And then from there, how they start to facilitate change. And so the sense of empowerment that then comes from that.
Mm-hmm.
And this is all self-driven, like that's the piece that I always, when necessary, try to really drive home to people, and that let's give credit to where credit is due. You have worked towards this, and you continue to work at maintaining it. And let's talk about what that has entailed. Because like you said, I think so often, and I'm paraphrasing here, obviously, but people are just clipping along, and they're caught up in the process, and they're very task oriented, possibly. And so, we have the opportunity to kind of shine a light on some of these areas and point out those successes, and where the growth is occurring, because otherwise sometimes they overlook it. And I think it's important to acknowledge that. So that's one of the many aspects that I definitely enjoy within the work. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it makes me think of sometimes if you're working, I know Jen works out at a gym a lot and is really, committed to her physical health and wellness, which is such a big part of our overall health and wellness. But I think if you're working with a physical trainer, there's sort of this tangible evidence, because your ability to bench press more increases, or, your muscles are literally getting bigger, or you're feeling more energy. There's in certain things, there's more tangible results that you can be yeah, there's success there. And so with therapy work, I mean, a lot of it is internal, right? And so to be able to quantify that and bring it forward and say, but actually, you used to feel so discouraged every time somebody would say that, where you almost couldn't recover, and look at where you are now. Or you used to say yes to everybody, and now you're setting all these boundaries to protect your own well-being that are more in alignment for you, or you're communicating more effectively with your spouse, or you're minimizing the coping that you were using that was negative, and maximizing all these other tools. And even though there's a lot of change happening, it's not always that visible change that there is attuned to. And so to just bring forward how much is different, and there are of course tangible things that they're saying and thinking, but it's a little more internal. It's not like if you were painting a wall, you could see the progress you're making on the wall very clearly. Right. So it's such an important part to recognize those internal, invisible sort of parts of ourselves. Mm-hmm. How are we attending to them and caring for them and acknowledging the growth, in those places that are as important as all the other areas of health, right? So we do have that holistic approach here. That's another factor for the center, is that we really do look at, our training is biopsychosocial, but broadly that just means holistic. We live in our bodies, we live in our relationships, in our contexts, our thoughts and our feelings and our behaviors we're all interconnected. And so we're looking at all of those different ways to support your mental health, and how integrated that is. And so important to think about. So awesome. Okay. What excites you, Rebecca? Take it away.
Okay, so to go off of Jennifer and Nadera, ultimately it's the therapeutic relationship being built with the client and myself that excites me the most. I like to connect with others and learn about their stories. And what I find is oftentimes the client will minimize their own experience. Mm-hmm. So they'll say, well, I don't necessarily know why I'm here, because so-and-so is experiencing something way worse than I am. Mm-hmm. So immediately I just try to emphasize the fact that what they are experiencing is valid, is happening, and it's worth talking about. Mm-hmm. So building that space and that trust with one another, I want them to feel seen, and I want them to feel heard. And when they do feel that way, I know that I'm doing my job, and we're building that strong relationship with one another. And like you said as well, Sarah, the small things and the things that you can't necessarily touch or see, those are the big things. So I want them to know, like, if you clean your room, if that was a big struggle for you, that is huge if you're now able to do that. So I want those insignificant things that they think in their mind, I want them to know that they are important, and I want them to feel seen and heard.
Mm-hmm. You know, it's interesting because one of the things and I've said this to all of you because we work together. So the way that the program is with Yorkville is that each of the students in the program meets with me weekly for supervision on their cases. And so we're collaborating, we're learning together, we're doing that to support the clients and their development as a therapist. So it's sort of this mentorship, learning, case conceptualization. Like there's a lot of things that come into that supervision role. But one of the things that I'm sure I've said to all of you, if I haven't here, I'm going to say it to you, is that even if there's one thing that changes from a session, that one thing can send somebody's life on a trajectory that's a totally different, like something as simple as them really having an insight to believe truly for the first time, it's okay for me to say no. Right? Imagine how that insight on its own could launch them into a totally different way of being in the world, in healthier relationships with better boundaries, right? So it is, as you say, Rebecca, the small things, but those small things are big things because cumulatively, those little tweaks, those little changes, it's like that book by James Clear, I think that's right, Atomic Habits, where he talks about how just tweaking the smallest things cumulatively have this amazing impact and effect. And so recognizing those slight changes give you this edge into a much healthier trajectory. And it also makes me think about like proactive and reactive mental health treatment, right? So most people will come to us because they're at the end of their rope. They're struggling. They're not functioning optimally. They are in a relationship that's about to end. They are, not sleeping. Like they're in a crisis, or at least approaching a crisis, or sense that they're spiraling somehow out of control. And that's that reactive kind of response to mental health. And which is really important, and absolutely send us an inquiry if you're in that space. We're here for you. But we also like to have that holistic approach that includes proactive things. So how do you have an ongoing maintenance of your mental health, right? So not just when you have an injury, are you looking after your body, but when you are also well, how are you looking after your mind, heart, soul? And, having strategies for that and having points of connection for accountability and living out your self-care plans and, staying in touch with somebody for your mental health. So again, there's these pieces that can happen in a setting like Covey Wellness Center that don't always happen in other places that really align with our philosophy of treatment. And so, you don't have to be in a crisis, going back to what Rebecca's saying, that's like catastrophic enough to warrant coming. Right. Mental health is for everyone. Everyone needs therapy. Everybody. We need therapy. Your therapists go to therapy. It's part of us staying effective in our work for you. That's a normal thing. And it's just as normal as going to a doctor or a naturopath or a physiotherapist or a gym or anywhere else that you go to support your health and wellness. And so that's something I'm really passionate about too, is like not just waiting to 15 years in your relationship till things are awful to then come in the first year, come proactively, set up a connection with a couples therapist proactively. If you're struggling, if you know that you have a negative bias in your thinking, don't wait until you're spiraling out of control in your work setting and you can't work anymore. Come right away, and know that you don't have to be, it doesn't have to be bad enough to come to therapy. I just think that's such an important stigma that I want to push back on. Everybody needs therapy. This is about wellness. This is the whole realm of positive psychology is really focused on the science of thriving. So surviving, getting through and healing from trauma, which yes, of course, that's part of it, but also like, how do I thrive? Yeah. How do I live well in the world? So That's a big part of it too. I'm just wondering if we can wrap up by going around the circle and maybe offering, like, what is a wellness tip that you guys offer your clients regularly? Just something, some kind of a simple takeaway that that we could give to the people who've made it this far in the video and are still listening, that might be something that they could implement right away to move that trajectory towards greater wellness. So Jennifer, I'm going to start with you because you haven't started yet.
Okay. I think there's value in talking about sleep hygiene, and just looking at routine and what that looks like and the role that that plays in overall wellness. So, that's been a topic of discussion. I mean, I'm in my eighth week now, but when it's felt as though there's been a place for it, it has been something that I have discussed with clients. And each time that I have integrated it into the session, it's proved to be worthwhile, because lo and behold, they're either not receiving adequate sleep from a standpoint of the duration, or it being broken sleep, so it's interrupted in that sense, or they report that they're sleeping excessively. So in either sense, we look at how that is one of the many factors that is playing into part of what has brought them through the front door, and then again looking at establishing a routine and how that could fit for them and their lifestyle. So that would be the place I would go to, kind of right off the get-go.
Yeah, I often say, like, back to basics when we start, right? So how is your sleep? How is your nutrition? How is your body movement? And what does that look like to start to just build that foundation back? And so often there are challenges in one or more of those areas that we can start to shift some things right away to start getting people feeling better. And sleep hygiene is just really evaluating the components of your sleep to set yourself up for the best possible good night's sleep. And it's so restorative. It's one of the primary forms of restorative self-care is a good night's sleep. So that's the great thing to think about. Okay, Rebecca, I'm going to go to you next.
Okay. I like to bring in the bucket analogy. So make sure that you're filling your own bucket and not necessarily pouring it all out to everyone else and being left with nothing. So making sure that you're doing the things that rejuvenate you, you're taking part in the self-care, you're sleeping well, you're just taking a step back and making sure that you're filling your own bucket in order to overflow into everyone else's and not running dry. So that's what I normally would say to people.
Yeah, because I think a lot of people do come with empty buckets, right? Like they've emptied out and there's nothing left for them. It's not. And so I've heard the analogy of, like, instead of an empty bucket and filling it, it's like you want to live from a reservoir.
Yes.
So it's like the bucket is on a reservoir that just fills, and then it's the overflow of our wellness and our reserves, and that goes out and goes forth, but it's keeps getting filled up, right? And what does that look like? I talk a lot about, full breath living, which is this idea that, like, we're often exhaling, giving out of ourselves into the world and all the things that we do in our parenting and our work and our managing our finances and everything that requires energy and time from us is this, like, sort of exhale into the world. And so how do we inhale to replenish that source, right? And keep that rhythm so that we're not exhaling to the point where we're totally depleted, but also so that we're not just taking to the point where we're not engaged meaningfully. Because that's another, challenge that people can have on the opposite end of that spectrum, is that they're just very, very self-focused. They're very, very insular. They're sort of feeding, consuming, taking things in, and like what's going out in meaningful ways in relationships and engagement with the world and work and things. So it's that full breath, that is sort of relating to that bucket idea, but something to think about. Okay, Nadera, let's hear from you with your tip.
I think you just segued that really well into me. I think there's great power in breath work. And my clients who may be watching this may laugh at me because I always ask about breath work and whether they engage in breath work, and there's so many different ways to engage in breath work. But even when we're in session, even after we have just had a long, hard discussion, and just the power of taking a full and a deep breath. I like to do a slow inhale and then hold for a count of 3 and then a slow exhale out. I think there's great, we're so caught up in the go, go, go of life. And that's a natural tendency that we all have, that it's very rare where we really stop and just try and focus on the present. But I find that breath work is also a great way to just reaffirm your sense of control for yourself. We can get very overwhelmed by all the things that we can't control, that are outside of our control. But your breath is within your control, and being able to slow that down and just allow yourself to be present and feel what you're feeling and experience what you're feeling. I think it's incredibly powerful.
Yeah, I love that. And it's making me think about, again, back to those basics, like our breath could be another one included in those basics, right? Like our breath is our very life, right? It does, it's full breath living in the metaphorical sense, but it also is full breath living in the actual physiological sense of that. And so I feel like, I think people underestimate that. At least I know I did, when people would say, you just breathe through it. I'd be like, especially things like labor or something, you're thinking, are you kidding me with this, with the breathing through it? And it wasn't really till I understood like what was happening in the neurobiology and what that meant for my body, that something this simple as a deep controlled breath could say to my body, you're safe, you're okay, right? It's so healing. And we dismiss it because it seems too simple. There must be something, must be harder than that. It must be harder than a good night's sleep and breath work. And yet in so many ways, these are foundational things, regardless of what you're going through. Right. So breath work's so important. And there's a great, if you're not convinced, there's a great book by James Nestor that we have in the store. We have a number of great books on breathwork actually in the wellness bookshop, but one recently is the investigative journalist James Nestor did a book on breath, and he went at it from the standpoint of like how integral it has been over the centuries in different cultures, what that looks like and why. And basically at the end of that, you're like, I just need to breathe my whole life. Like I need to be picked. Like, it's like, you're so inspired by how foundational this concept of breath work is. And there's lots of ways, like you're saying, Nadera, there's so many tricks and tips and options, but I use essential oils a lot, for example, to help me pay attention to my breath, because that aromatherapy is so soothing and helpful. But what we find, what works for us to engage with that, to stay focused and to use those strategies. So lots of great stuff here. Well, thank you for coordinating this. This was really a lot of fun. I hope you guys had fun too. And I hope those of you who are listening feel like you have a better sense of these newest team members. So if you're looking to work with Rebecca or Nadera or Jennifer, the way to get in touch with us at Covey Wellness Center is super simple. You go to our website, which is covey-wellnesscenter.com. If you type in Covey Wellness Center, you'll find us. And there's a simple form that you just fill out to start the process. And I did a little Instagram video on this recently in more detail, sort of what happens. But the basic thing is, once you send that inquiry in, then Nadera and Jennifer and Rebecca are our screening team right now. And so one of them will be in touch with you to have a short phone conversation and to sort of gather some information so that we can understand what your needs are and how to best fit you, because we're so pro therapeutic alliance, right? How to best fit you with a person on our team that's going to be able to provide you with what you need and align with what you're looking for. And so that information comes past my desk, and then I make a placement recommendation, and then you get transitioned to that client and you get started right away. There's a lot of places with long wait lists. My version is that if we can't get people in within 3 weeks, we need to get more people. And so we will be able to get you in. You won't have to wait. And so just make sure that you know that that's available to you and you can get started on your mental health. And I'm just excited, and we'll see where this takes us. Maybe this will turn into a series of meeting all the people on the Covey Wellness Center team. But thanks for coming out, Rebecca, Jennifer, and Nadera, for taking the time. And if you're watching this video on social media, I don't know how it's going to get posted, but we're going to figure that out. So if you're watching it on social media, comment, let us know what was helpful to you. Hopefully, there's been some things, those takeaway wellness tips at the very least are great things to think about for your self-care. Okay. Have a great day, everybody.